The auction hall hummed with apathy, a glittering tomb of polished shoes and murmured judgment. At its center lay a scarred chestnut stallion, ribs visible beneath a matted coat, his head slumped against the sawdust like a broken promise. The auctioneer's voice cracked with desperation. "Do I hear an offer?" But the crowd snorted derisively. A woman in sequins sneered, "That thing's halfway to glue," her laugh sharp as a whip. The horse's eyes were hollow, his breath shallow, as if he'd long surrendered to the weight of existing. Then a chair screeched. A young man in faded jeans stood at the back, his voice slicing through the noise. "I'll take him." The room froze. Mockery erupted. "You're wasting your cash, kid." But Ethan didn't flinch. He stepped forward, payment crumpled in his fist, and knelt beside the horse. The stallion flinched, but didn't retreat, as Ethan whispered words too soft for anyone else to hear. A flicker of life sparked in the horse's eyes. His ears twitched. For the first time in years, he lifted his head. Days later, the stallion, now Phoenix, stood trembling in a sunlit stable, his scars stark against the morning light. Ethan sat cross-legged outside his stall, reading aloud from a tattered novel, his voice steady, unthreatening. Phoenix pressed himself into the shadows, muscles taut, as if expecting pain. But Ethan never pushed. He lingered day after day, until one afternoon, a hoof shifted in the straw. Phoenix took a single step toward him, nostrils flaring, curiosity outweighing fear. Progress. Yet the next morning, when Ethan lifted a bridle, Phoenix reared violently, his scream echoing across the fields. Ethan dropped the gear, palms raised. "It's okay," he murmured. Though his hands shook, he retreated, giving space, and returned hours later with only a brush. The stallion stiffened, but didn't bolt as Ethan's strokes smoothed his matted coat. By sunset, Phoenix's head drooped, a sigh escaping him. A fragile truce. Whispers snaked through town. "That kid's delusional," scoffed a feed store clerk. But others lingered at the pasture fence, watching Ethan lead Phoenix through cautious circles. The horse's gait grew steadier, his eyes less haunted. One evening, an old rancher named Grayson appeared, his voice gravelly with decades of dust. "You can't mend what's broken," he warned Ethan. "Unless you know where it cracked." The words festered. That night, Ethan paced his kitchen, Phoenix's file spread on the table, a single name, Victor Harland. At dawn, he drove to a derelict ranch, its fences sagging like rotten teeth. Harland, a grizzled man with ice-chip eyes, spat. That nag was weak, broke under pressure. Ethan's fists clenched, but he kept his voice calm. "Why sell him?" Harland hesitated. "Maybe someone'd see what I couldn't." Back at the stable, Ethan pressed his forehead to Phoenix's neck. "I know now," he whispered. The horse exhaled, warm and slow, as if sharing the weight. But as Ethan turned to leave, headlights cut through the dark. A stranger stood in the barn doorway, lean, weathered, eyes piercing. "Name's Carter," he said, gaze locked on Phoenix. "Worked with Harland. That horse, he wasn't just weak." Ethan stepped between them, protective. Carter raised his palms. He was trained for endurance races, pushed till he shattered. Phoenix's ears flattened, a memory flashing in his eyes. "Harland ruined him," Carter said, quieter. "But you're putting him back together." Ethan's throat tightened. "Why tell me this?" Carter's jaw twitched. "Because he deserves to run again. Properly." The barn reeked of sweat and hay, the air thick with the tension of unspoken histories. Carter's presence loomed like a shadow, as he uncoiled a rope, its fibers frayed but sturdy. "He needs to remember he's strong," Carter said, his voice low, eyes never leaving Phoenix. Ethan hovered nearby, jaw tight, distrust simmering beneath his skin. The stallion stood rigid, nostrils flaring at the scent of leather, the same smell that had once preceded pain. Carter moved slowly, looping the rope around Phoenix's torso, avoiding the jagged scar along his flank. "Easy now," he murmured, but Phoenix shuddered, a whimper escaping his throat. Ethan stepped forward, hand outstretched, but Carter shook his head. "Let him fight it." Phoenix's legs trembled, muscles coiled like springs. For a heartbeat he froze, then lunged backward, the rope snapping taut. Carter held firm, stance unyielding. "Don't let him win," he barked. But Ethan saw the panic in Phoenix's eyes, the whites flashing like fractured glass. "Enough," Ethan snapped, shoving between them. He tore the rope free, fingers grazing Phoenix's heaving side. The stallion collapsed against the stall, breath ragged. Carter's lips thinned. Sentiment's gonna get him killed. They didn't speak for days. Ethan worked alone, guiding Phoenix through moonlit drills, the stallion's hooves carving arcs in the dew-drenched grass. Progress came in fragments, a loosened muscle here, a flicker of curiosity there. One dawn, as Ethan adjusted a lightweight saddle, Phoenix didn't bolt. His ears twitched, but he stood still, sweat glistening like liquid courage. Ethan's chest swelled, until a truck backfired in the distance. Phoenix erupted, bucking wildly, the saddle clattering to the dirt. Ethan staggered back, palms scraped raw, as the stallion fled to the far pasture. Claire found him hours later, slumped against the stable wall. "He's not just scared," she said, thumbing through Phoenix's medical charts. "His joints are riddled with old injuries. Push too hard, and he'll break." Ethan stared at the horizon, where Phoenix grazed alone. "What if I'm not enough?" Claire's silence was answer enough. Carter returned unannounced, a dusty photo album tucked under his arm. "Harland wasn't the first," he said, flipping to a page filled with racing trophies and faded ribbons. A younger Carter grinned beside a sleek, uncanny look-alike of Phoenix. "His sire," Carter muttered. "Won every race till Harland rode him into the ground." Ethan traced the photo's creases. "Why show me this?" Carter's voice dropped. "Phoenix isn't just scarred. He's terrified of his own bloodline." The truth hung between them, sour and heavy. That night, Ethan dreamt of racetracks, endless loops of dust and screaming crowds. Phoenix thrashed in his stall, waking him with a guttural cry. Ethan found the stallion drenched in sweat, eyes wild, chest heaving. "I'm here," he whispered, pressing his forehead to Phoenix's. The horse trembled, a broken hum vibrating in his throat. At dawn, Ethan relented. He let Carter lead Phoenix to the round pen, a weathered bell dangling from the fence. "He needs to face the noise," Carter insisted, tying the bell's rope to a post. Phoenix froze, ears pinned, as Carter rang it. A sharp, metallic clang. The stallion bolted, slamming into the rails. Ethan lunged forward, but Carter gripped his arm. "Wait." Phoenix circled the pen, frantic, until his gallop slowed to a trot. The bell rang again. He flinched, but kept moving, muscles quivering. Carter rang it a third time. Phoenix stopped, stared. Then, with a snort, he stepped toward the sound, neck outstretched. Ethan's breath hitched. The stallion nudged the bell with his muzzle. Its chimed soft now, almost musical. Carter's laugh was rough. "There's the fighter." Word spread. By week's end, a small crowd gathered at the pasture. Locals clutching coffees, kids perched on fences. Phoenix, once a punchline, now paced the field like a ghost of his pedigree, his coat gleaming under the late sun. A reporter snapped photos, her flash popping. Phoenix startled, hooves skidding in the mud. But Ethan was there, a steady hand on his neck. "Look at me," he urged. The stallion's gaze locked on his, the chaos fading to a blur. Later, as Ethan hosed down the pen, a black sedan crawled up the driveway. The window lowered, revealing a man in a tailored suit, a sponsor, flanked by aides. "We want the horse," he said, sliding a business card through the gap. "Name your price." Ethan's grip tightened on the hose. "Not for sale." The man smirked. "Harlan's got debts. You'll change your mind." The sedan vanished, leaving tire marks on the gravel. Ethan found Phoenix in his stall, head bowed, as if sensing the storm. He pressed the business card to his palm, the embossed letters cutting into his skin. Silverwood Racing. In the shadows, Carter watched, face unreadable. "They'll never stop coming," he said. Ethan crumpled the card. "Let them try." The legal notice arrived at dawn, its crisp envelope, stark against the stable's rusted mailbox. Harlan versus Montgomery, re-ownership of thoroughbred Phoenix. Ethan crushed the paper, ink smearing his palms. "He's mine," he hissed, storming into the barn, where Phoenix dozed, head drooping over the stall door. The stallion stirred, sensing the rage coiled in Ethan's shoulders. "We're not backing down," Ethan vowed, but his voice wavered. Carter materialized in the doorway, face grim. "Harlan's desperate. Debt collectors are circling. He'll sell Phoenix to Silverwood just to survive." Ethan slammed a fist against the wall. "Over my corpse." Training turned feverish. Carter drilled Phoenix in the pre-dawn dark, the stallion's breath fogging the air as he lunged over hurdles, muscles rippling beneath healed scars. Ethan watched, jaw clenched, as Phoenix cleared the final jump, a fluid, fearless arc. "He's ready," Carter said. But Ethan shook his head. "Not for them." The unspoken Silverwood hung between them. The charity event was Claire's idea, a demonstration for wounded veterans, far from racing's cutthroat world. No pressure, she promised. But the fairgrounds teemed with crowds, children shrieking as cotton candy vendors barked. Phoenix's nostrils flared at the chaos, his hooves skittering on gravel. Ethan gripped his lead, murmuring steadiness into the stallion's twitching ear. Just you and me. They stepped into the arena, sand churning beneath them. For 3 flawless minutes, Phoenix wove through cones, pivoted on command, his trust in Ethan absolute. Until a drone buzzed overhead, its whine piercing. Phoenix reared, a scream tearing from his throat as the crowd gasped. Ethan clung to the lead, boots dragging through dirt. Look at me! The stallion's eyes snapped to his, wild but listening. Slowly, hooves met earth. The applause was thunderous, but Ethan only saw Phoenix's heaving sides, the tremor in his legs. Silverwood's agent cornered him at the concession stand. That little stunt proved our point, he said, sliding a check across the counter. 6 zeros glinted in the sun. Harlan's lawsuit disappears. The horse lives like a king. Everybody wins. Ethan stared at the number, stomach churning. That night, he found Phoenix asleep, head pillowed on straw, a faint snore rumbling his chest. The check burned in his pocket. Carter found him vomiting behind the stable at midnight. Take the money, he rasped, voice frayed. You can't fight this. Ethan wiped his mouth. You knew, he breathed. Knew Harlan would come for him. Carter's silence was confession enough. The truth detonated. Carter had tipped off Silverwood, hoping to force Ethan's hand. They'll destroy him, Ethan spat. Carter's eyes hardened. Or make him a legend, your choice. The courtroom reeked of bleach and ambition. Harlan slouched at the plaintiff's table, neck ruddy above a borrowed suit. Ethan's lawyer parroted phrases like emotional distress and equine rehabilitation. But the judge's frown deepened with each word. Phoenix, sequestered in a trailer outside, kicked the walls in rhythm with Ethan's pulse. Irrelevant, the judge snapped as Claire testified about Phoenix's trauma. When Silverwood's lawyer called Carter to the stand, Ethan's blood turned to ice. Montgomery disregarded professional advice. Risking the animal's safety? The lawyer purred. Carter's knuckles whitened on the rail. He prioritized the horse's comfort over progress. The lie slithered into the record. Ethan's lawyer objected, but the gavel drowned her out. Final arguments Monday, the judge declared. Phoenix refused Ethan's touch that evening, circling his stall like a caged storm. I'm trying, Ethan pleaded, but the stallion turned his back, tail lashing. At midnight, headlights pierced the stable. Ethan bolted outside, shovel in hand, as shadows dismounted from a Silverwood van. Don't, a voice drawled. Harlan stepped into the glare, a pistol glinting at his hip. Hand over the horse, kid, before you get hurt. Phoenix's scream split the air, a raw, primal sound. He rammed the stall door, wood splintering. Harlan faltered as the stallion surged into the yard, teeth bared, eyes blazing. Ethan froze. This wasn't his Phoenix. This was the ghost of the horse Harlan had broken. Fury made flesh. The stallion reared, hooves slashing the air inches from Harlan's face. Shoot it, Harlan barked, but the henchman scrambled into the van, tires screeching. Alone, Harlan faced the stallion's wrath. Easy, boy, he croaked, pistol trembling. Phoenix advanced, herding him toward the fence. A gunshot cracked. Ethan lunged too late. Phoenix staggered, a dark bloom spreading on his shoulder. Harlan sprinted into the dark, as Ethan collapsed beside the stallion, pressing his sleeve to the wound. Stay with me, he choked. Phoenix's breath came in shallow hitches, his gaze clinging to Ethan's. Sirens wailed in the distance. Carter materialized, face ashen, and helped hoist Phoenix onto a tarp. Clinic's 20 minutes, he muttered, blood soaking his boots. Ethan crouched in the truck bed, cradling Phoenix's head as the stallion's eyes fluttered shut. Fight, he begged. The highway blurred. The clinic lights glared like a cold sun, bleaching the panic in Ethan's veins to numbness. Phoenix lay motionless on the steel table, his breath shallow, blood pooling beneath him. A vet barked orders. 5-line clamps, oxygen, as Ethan pressed his forehead to the stallion's, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. You're not done yet, he pleaded, fingers tangled in Phoenix's mane. The heart monitor flatlined. A jolt. Phoenix's legs spasmed. The vet cursed, scrambling for defibrillator paddles. Ethan stumbled back, colliding with Carter in the doorway. "This is my fault," Carter choked. But Ethan didn't hear him. He was 10 years old again, watching his father's tractor flip into a ravine, helpless. Not again. Not him. The vet shouted, "Clear!" Phoenix's body arched, a guttural whinny tearing through the room. The monitor stuttered, "Beep." Dawn bled through the clinic blinds as Ethan slumped in a plastic chair. Phoenix's labored breaths, the only proof he'd survived the night. The bullet had missed major arteries, but shattered bone. "He'll never race," the vet warned. Ethan didn't care. He traced the fresh bandages, the stallion's eyes half-lidded but alive. "You're enough," he murmured. Just like this. News vans besieged the stable by noon. Local hero horse survives shooting. Headlines screamed. Ethan ignored them, too busy crutching buckets of water to Phoenix's stall. The stallion refused to stand, his wounded leg suspended in a sling. "Eat," Ethan urged, offering an apple. Phoenix turned his head away. Claire arrived with painkillers and a folder. "Harlan's in custody," she said. Silverwood dropped their claim. Bad PR. Ethan barely nodded. Victory tasted like ash. 3 weeks passed. Phoenix's leg healed, but his spirit didn't. He flinched at shadows, ignored training cues, and spent hours staring at the pasture fence. One evening, Ethan found him lying down, eyes dull. "You're giving up," he whispered, voice breaking. Carter appeared at his shoulder, holding a worn leather halter. "Let him choose." Ethan hesitated, then unlatched the stall. Phoenix didn't move. "Go," Ethan urged, nudging his flank. The stallion lurched to his feet, limping into the twilight. Ethan followed, heart in his throat, as Phoenix picked his way past the training ring, past the pasture, into the wildflower field beyond. The stallion stopped, nostrils flaring at the scent of rain. Then, with a shuddering breath, he lowered his head and grazed. It wasn't a gallop. It wasn't a victory lap. But for the first time since the shooting, Phoenix moved without pain. Ethan sank to his knees in the dirt, laughing through tears. The town rallied. Donations flooded in. Feed, vet bills, even a custom brace for Phoenix's leg. A documentary crew arrived, but Ethan shut them out. "This isn't a show," he told Claire. She smiled. "It's a lesson." On the anniversary of the auction, Ethan led Phoenix to the fairgrounds at dawn. No crowds, no cameras, just an empty track and a starting gate crusted with rust. Phoenix stiffened, muscles quivering. But Ethan didn't push. "Your turn," he said, unclipping the lead. For a heartbeat, Phoenix stood frozen. Then, with a snort, he trotted to the gate, nosing its hinges. Ethan's breath caught. The stallion turned, ears pricked, as if waiting. Ethan mounted bareback, fingers woven in Phoenix's mane. "Okay," he breathed. Phoenix walked. Then, tentatively, he jogged. The rhythm was uneven, his gait favoring his healed leg, but his head stayed high. Ethan pressed his cheek to the stallion's neck, feeling the old scars, the new strength. They rounded the final turn, the sunrise blazing ahead, and for a fleeting moment Phoenix surged, not the desperate bolt of a racehorse, but the steady, joyful stride of a creature unshackled. Carter watched from the fence, a faded ribbon in his hand. Phoenix's sire's last trophy. He tucked it into the stallion's feed bucket and walked away, without a word. That night, Ethan found Phoenix sleeping in the pasture, moonlight silvering his coat. He sat beside him, the grass damp beneath his palms. "You're free," he whispered. The stallion's ear flicked, a contented sigh escaping his nostrils. In town, the documentary aired. Kids doodled Phoenix in notebooks. Vets quoted him in speeches, but in the stable, nothing changed. Ethan still rose at dawn, still mucked stalls, still read aloud, as Phoenix lipped carrots from his palm. One morning, a letter arrived. "Dear Mr. Montgomery, my daughter has cerebral palsy. She says Phoenix taught her broken isn't the same as worthless." Ethan pinned it to the barn wall, beside a photo of Phoenix grazing in wildflowers, head high, scars gleaming like metals. At dusk, Ethan led the stallion to the hill overlooking the valley. Phoenix paused, ears swiveling at the cry of a red-tailed hawk. Then he nudged Ethan's shoulder, urging him forward. They walked into the sunset, two shadows stitching themselves into the horizon, no longer savior and saved, but equals.